This is St. Louis on the Air from St. Louis Public Radio. I'm Elaine Cha. More than 1 million people in the United States live with Parkinson's disease, and the Midwest has one of the highest incidence rates of the incurable neurological disorder in the country. With 90,000 new cases diagnosed each year, there's an urgency to understanding what causes Parkinson's and how biomedical research can help people live longer and better with and even overcome the condition. Journalist Mike Fitzgerald has recently been diving into these facets of Parkinson's disease. He joins us now to talk about that work. Mike, welcome back to the program.
It's great to be back.
So, Mike, many people may have some familiarity with Parkinson's, but would you provide a brief overview of what a progressive neurological disorder is?
Yeah, Parkinson's is the fastest growing brain disease in the world. By 2040, it's estimated about 13 million people will have it. It's a disease characterized by the degradation of the neurons that generate dopamine, which controls movement. It's characterized by tremors in the hand, by freezing of movements. It's debilitating. It's not necessarily fatal, but it can indirectly lead to someone's death.
Mm-hmm. Mike, what turned your attention and reporting to Parkinson's disease last year?
Right. Well, I was extremely intrigued by what was happening as a result of the Trump administration's attacks on science. I know people, friends of mine and relatives who are suffering from neurodegenerative diseases, including ALS, and I wanted to see how his attacks on the infrastructure of science, everything from clinical trials to basic research to funding for important laboratories like those at Washington University, was affecting people with neurodegenerative diseases. And one of the things that I came across was this incredible program called Brock Study Boxing. This is how I met our two guests today, Ellen and Mary. And I really got interested in just how are people coping with these attacks on the very foundation of science in America.
Mm-hmm. And these two folks that you've mentioned are Chesterfield resident Ellen McCloskey. Welcome, Ellen.
Thank you.
And Kirkwood resident Mary Egan. Thank you both for being here today.
Thank you.
So talk with us about how Parkinson's has affected your life. And Mary, let's begin with you.
Well, it took me by complete surprise, I would have to say. I have had a healthy lifestyle, was not on any medications for my heart or cholesterol or any such thing, just took a daily vitamin. And then I started to notice a weakness in my left leg, a shuffling of my left foot when I wasn't being conscious about it. And I went to my doctor and said, there's something off about my left foot. It wants to shuffle. And we took it from there and started to look at different possibilities, undergo several tests. And it took about a year to 18 months before I had a neurologist say Parkinson's. And I was blown out of the water. I was shocked.
And does that mirror what you experienced as well, Ellen?
No, exactly, because every single person with Parkinson's is different. We're none going to be the same. So what happened with me was I was sitting at lunch with some friends, and I have a friend that is somewhat outspoken, and I was just sitting there with my hands on the table, and she yelled across the table at me, "Your hand's shaking. Will you go to the doctor?" And I said, "Oh, well, I got an appointment in 2 weeks coming up. I'll just mention it." So I did, and he went, "Oh, we got to get a brain scan." And so we did. I got a brain scan, and he came back and said, "You have Parkinson's." Sent me to a neurologist, and the neurologist, I went in and he looked at me and he said, "What makes you think you have Parkinson's? You don't look like you have Parkinson's." And I thought, okay. So my niece had videotaped me and with my hand shaking, so I showed him that on my phone, the videotape, and he went, "Oh, you do have Parkinson's."
So getting that news, Mary, you mentioned that you were shocked by the diagnosis.
Yes.
Why was that the case?
It was just so completely out of the blue. I didn't know anybody at that time with Parkinson's. I had a brother-in-law who 20 years ago passed with Parkinson's. And I guess I thought of it in terms of very drastic muscle movements and a male thing more than a female thing. And so it was just completely out of place in my mind. Of course, now I've come to know there are many women with these symptoms, and that it is way more prevalent than I ever would have guessed.
Mm-hmm. So your prior knowledge of Parkinson's, I mean, how much did that prepare you for some of the things that you are dealing with now?
Well, when I was so stunned, I guess I just said, I can't believe I could have Parkinson's. And my daughter is a nurse practitioner, and she said, now, Mom, don't you think about Uncle Jim, because that's not always Parkinson's. She said, I have lots of women patients who live full, busy lives with their symptoms well managed. So don't think about just one image. And that was helpful. Mm-hmm. You have to remember not to put yourself in a box.
Yeah, I know no one that had Parkinson's. Didn't know anybody then. Now I do, of course, because I'm involved with the Parkinson's community. Mm-hmm. But no one in my family, no friends, no relatives, nothing. And since I've been going to seminars like at WashU with Dr. Perlmutter and some other places, I found out that less than 2% is hereditary. Less than 2%, okay? So most of us aren't going to have those family connections. And I have a friend also who has Parkinson's, and she relayed to me like a year ago that her father had it, her mother had it, she has it, her sister had it. She has two sisters that don't have it. And they had all the genetic testing down because you immediately go, oh, that's genetic. Nope, nothing genetic whatsoever. Mm-hmm. It's all environmental.
Right. Well, and on that environmental note, Mike, what is it that you have found about the relationship between or the differences between hereditary and environmental conditions that are connected to Parkinson's?
Well, getting back to the issue of what causes Parkinson's, no one is absolutely sure at this point. We may never know for sure, but we do know that it's a complex mix of various factors, including genetics, exposure to environmental toxins like herbicides, and lifestyle factors, with age being the greatest risk factor. So we know that for sure. We know that herbicides are increasingly being cited as the main culprit. I wrote a story that we published Monday about the link between a very popular herbicide named paraquat. It's legal in the United States, but increasingly banned across the industrialized world. And paraquat seems to be a major component in why so many Americans have Parkinson's. Mm-hmm.
And that is something that we're going to talk about a little bit later in the show. Ellen and Mary, for you, were you looking back on the things that you have been exposed to over your lifetime that may have caused the Parkinson's?
I have thought about this over and over and over, and I just can't really come up with anything. Mm-hmm. I mean, if I had been exposed, then why wasn't my sister exposed? Why weren't my parents exposed? Why, why weren't friends exposed? I don't know where it came from. I don't know how I got it. So my theory is, like Mike brought up, I think it's on our food. I think from where it's grown. I think cattle eat grass that has herbicides on it. And I just think that for me personally, that's the only thing I could come up with. I don't know. Mm-hmm. I lived with my parents as a kid and then on my own, and I don't know.
Yeah.
The other thing I thought about was I always lived in a condo or a villa, and the yards are taken care of. So maybe that was on the grass there where I walk in and out and don't really know it. Who knows for sure? Mm-hmm. We just don't know.
Yeah. Mary, for you, you mentioned your brother-in-law, Jim. Were there things that you were thinking about the environments in which he lived?
Yes, because I know my sister did speak about that at the time of his illness, and they said that they knew that he had grown up in a house with a large yard, and his father was constantly trimming the garden and spraying the insecticides and other chemicals. And Jim would say that he knew he had exposure in that form. I myself could not think, like Ellen said, of anything in my past that was along those lines. And there were 9 children in my family. I am 8th of 9. And I thought, you're usually doing things with your siblings. And I've had the exposure where they have not. So I don't know if that's tied into DNA or something else.
Yeah. Mike, with the reporting that you have done, the two of you are here because you all met through the ROC study program. This is exercise that you are doing. It's a group that you're meeting with. But what did you find, Mike, in terms of medical advances and discoveries about what helps Parkinson's patients?
Right. Now, we know for a fact, and people who take part in ROC Steady Boxing can attest to this, that exercise is a huge factor in keeping at bay the symptoms of Parkinson's. There's something about the dopamine levels that intense exercise creates. And when you watch these participants at ROC Steady Boxing, I mean, they put them through their paces. They're punching that bag hard. They're doing all kinds of calisthenics. The other thing, too, is they both told me there's the community aspect. They're talking to each other. They're building up community. And, of course, as we know, community builds resilience. It activates neural connections in our brain that make us stronger. We need community in all ways, but especially when you're dealing with a progressive disease like this.
Yes, and I can tell you that the girls from the boxing class are getting together tomorrow with a friend who hasn't been there in a year because her health had deteriorated just a little bit. So we're going to get together and have lunch because we have this community that we have built now dealing with ROC Steady Boxing and the environment there. And I would just like to say one other thing. We have people that only come to ROC Steady Boxing once a week. It's offered Monday, Wednesday, Friday because they can't afford it. And it seems to me that if the medical field is saying this is what helps, then we should be able to write it off our taxes or medical insurance should cover it or something of that nature. So the people that can't come 3 days a week, like me, could come more often.
Yeah.
Good point.
I'm so glad that you brought that up because the barriers to, there may be options out there, but if they're not practically accessible, then it does not help as many people as it could be.
Absolutely.
How has this community been important to living with this condition for you, Mary?
Oh, it's been tremendous. I had spoken with Mike earlier, and I said it's been huge physically because I know I am stronger now, arms and legs, than I was 2 years ago. So it has been a huge benefit to me, but socially as well. The connections are important. When my physical ailments were more of a problem, I was doing less. I didn't want to go to the grocery store because I took too long. Didn't want to walk the dog because it took too much energy. And so I was doing less and less. And I thought, my world is shrinking and this is not good. And then better meds helped a lot. And then going to ROC Steady happened. And that made all of the difference. Now, I'm out more connections, feeling more capable. So it's been beneficial physically and emotionally.
And there's a tremendous amount of people that would like to be part of ROC Steady Boxing. In fact, Brent, the person that teaches our classes, he's just as of last week, opened another place in St. Charles because weekly he was inundated with messages from people in St. Charles, please have ROC Steady Boxing out here. We can't drive all that distance, but we really need it.
Mike, what did you find around medication? This is something that we've heard from both Ellen and Mary. What do we have in terms of the medicines that are available? And very specifically, too, how has instability in federal funding for biomedical research affecting prospects for folks like Mary and Ellen and all those people who are contacting the Rocksteady boxing instructor for classes?
Well, there have been a line of new medications that have become available, including a medication called Rytary that a lot of people with Parkinson's use. But the thing about using any kind of medication, over time it loses its efficacy. And what the Trump administration has done, and we should be very angry about this, is they've done so much damage to our research infrastructure. They've taken a sledgehammer to the drug development pipeline, particularly the National Institutes of Health, which used to be the world's most respected and most well-funded organization for promoting biomedical research. They've slashed budgets. They've fired thousands of scientists. They've made ideology the most important factor in research now for a lot of scientists. They have to keep quiet. Like, for instance, one of the big problems in Parkinson's research is we don't know how people of color are affected by certain medicines or what their rates are. But because of the Trump administration's obsession with DEI, they've made it impossible to find that out. Dr. Perlmutter, who you mentioned, I've interviewed him. He tried to do research on the problems that people of color face in obtaining help for Parkinson's disease, but the Trump administration made that virtually impossible.
Mm-hmm. And I can tell you, I've participated at WashU in some of their research projects, but now we can't. There's no money. Mm-hmm. And that's so sad, because we would like something. Michael J. Fox has done a phenomenal job, but we also had a phenomenal organization here in St. Louis, and now they don't have the money.
Mm-hmm. How much is that a part of the conversation that you are having with people who are part of the Rocksteady boxing program, and with your family members, with your friends? Mary?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
Yeah, how much of what we've just been talking about and the impacts to research, how much of that has been part of conversations that you've had with others?
Absolutely. I've spoken with my family about the benefits of the Rocksteady boxing, and that if it weren't available to me, how different my life would be. I said I'd be sitting at home on the couch, most likely. And so, it's to be an active member in your family, in your community, living the life that you have gotten used to living. That's your goal, as close to normal as possible. And I know when I first spoke with my physician and movement disorder specialist, I had said, what can I do to take better care of myself? And he said, exercise, exercise, exercise. Mm-hmm. And I said, okay, so that's what you come away with. And that's working now, but I always say that's working today. Tomorrow, then we'll have to see what else they have to offer. And without the research, there's a dead end.
And I can tell you, in my boxing class, Carol has participated in the research. Frank has participated in the research. I've participated in the I could go on with listing all the people that have participated. And, WashU is very nice. They want to give you a check for $100 when you participate, but I don't need that. I can just turn it back over and say, here, I'm donating it. Put it in your vend and do more research on this.
Mm-hmm. Are there any myths or misconceptions about Parkinson's that you're discovering not to be true, or that need more context in order to be better understood? Mike?
Well, for one thing, a lot of people seem to believe, and chime in when you want to say something about this, but a lot of people believe Parkinson's is something that will keep you permanently sidelined. As soon as you get the diagnosis, you can't leave the house, you're too debilitated, you can't hold a job. That's not true at all. Medicines like Rytary allow people to extend their life in the workforce for years, and it's great. And to me, what's tragic is we are on the verge of so many important breakthrough discoveries as far as treatments and medicine, but the Trump administration's made that impossible because of their budget cuts.
And I personally, it makes me nervous to even say his name, because he has a tendency to come after people that don't agree with him as our president. But this is just one area that he could turn around his decision on, and people in the United States would be so thankful to him for doing that if he would just do that. We need this research. And I'm not going to say it should just be Parkinson's. Medical research, like you said, Mike, in general, needs to be done. And I would like to see the United States of America be number one in medical research.
Mary, in light of everything that we've talked about today, how are you planning for your future?
You tell yourself you're going to be your own best advocate, that when I talk to my doctor and they will ask, how well is it working? Are there any gaps? Are there any off times? And so far my answer is always no, everything's working very well. But as soon as it's not, address it, find out what other medications are available, start to experiment, and then move forward. But you have to be aggressive and assertive with yourself and not become complacent or comfortable. Mm-hmm. Always work for the next level.
Yeah, and Mary?
And I have actually looked into some places for seniors to live, and one of them told me, once you move in there, they will keep you for life. It doesn't matter if you run out of money, if you don't run out of money or whatever, except if you have one of 4 diseases, and one is Parkinson's.
Huh.
So people are realizing we could have to have this person here for years with Parkinson's, and we can't afford to do that necessarily. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of sad, too.
Yeah, so that presents then another set
economic side to it.
Right. Well, Chesterfield resident Ellen McCloskey and Kirkwood resident Mary Ian, thank you so much for joining us today to talk about your experiences and insights when it comes to living with Parkinson's disease.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We wish you the best
Appreciate
also as you continue boxing.
Thank you.
We need to take a quick break, but we'll be back shortly, continue this conversation with journalist Mike Fitzgerald and his recent reporting on Parkinson's, coverage that includes connections to East St. Louis and some of the highest rates of Parkinson's diagnoses in the Midwest. This is St. Louis on the Air on St. Louis Public Radio.
If you have a smart speaker, you have access to the entire world of NPR and St. Louis Public Radio. All the latest news and all the captivating stories. Activate our voices with yours by telling your smart speaker to play St. Louis Public Radio.
Welcome back. Let's return to our conversation with journalist Mike Fitzgerald. He's recently completed a series of pieces about Parkinson's disease. His work was commissioned by the River City Journalism Fund. Mike's coverage has included a story about ways people living with the condition are coping, and before the break we met 2 St. Louis residents who shared about their experiences. It has also covered local effects of slashed federal funding for local biomedical research related to Parkinson's disease. Now, the other locally relevant part of your reporting, Mike, has to do with potential environmental causes. And Parkinson's afflicts more than 1 million Americans, with 90,000 new cases diagnosed each year. The National Institutes of Health found that from 1990 to 2015, the number of people with Parkinson's disease doubled to over 6 million, and that's a number that's projected to double again to more than 12 million by 2040. So for years, Mike, scientists have believed genetics was the primary cause, but as you report, mounting evidence has shifted some researchers' thinking on what causes the disease. Can you summarize for us what recent breakthrough studies have found?
Yeah, so ever since a British pharmacist named James Parkinson wrote an essay called the Essay on Shaking Palsy, people have been wondering what is causing this. Well, one thing we've seen is that makes us think it's environmentally based is the fact that we have the most Parkinson's cases in industrialized countries. China, for instance, has more than 5 million cases. The least industrialized countries have the fewest. So that indicates there's some type of environmental trigger. Mm-hmm. We're seeing lots and lots of research in the last 2 years, in fact, showing a very clear-cut connection between the herbicide paraquat in particular and Parkinson's disease.
Mike, what is paraquat?
Yeah, it's a very potent and very effective weed killer. It's used all across the United States. It's used on a wide variety of crops to kill annual grasses and weeds, as well as to dry out a lot of crops too. So it's very effective at that. But ever since it was first synthesized in the 19th century, it was seen as very toxic to tissue of any kind, plant tissue or human tissue. And even a small amount could prove fatal if you drink it.
Mm-hmm. How would a person know if they have been exposed to paraquat?
That's difficult to say. Most people who've been exposed to paraquat don't even know it. Paraquat can work its way into a water system, especially in rural areas where well water is not tested for paraquat. It takes decades, of course, to develop the symptoms of Parkinson's disease, and so you may not have any kind of documentary evidence to show that paraquat somehow was used on a farm field near where you grew up. We don't know for sure. Mm-hmm. But scientists have done lots of testing on laboratory rats. They've done testing on human beings. They've done correlational studies, spatial studies that show high incidence of Parkinson's near where people were growing. I mean, this is research in the last 2 years. It's a growing mountain of evidence that's conclusive and irrefutable.
Mm-hmm. Mike, you spoke with a resident of Quincy who believes that her parents developed Parkinson's due to drinking well water that was contaminated. Would you share some of Deborah Gorman's story? Yeah,
so Deborah Gorman told me her parents, Tom and Nancy Grancolis, they lived in a subdivision in Freeburg, Illinois, just a little south of Belleville, maybe about a 20-minute drive from St. Louis. They lived in a subdivision. The Grancolis were a very healthy couple. They were very careful about what they ate. They ate only organic food. They walked everywhere, but they lived in their subdivision next door to a farm field for 20 years that was regularly sprayed. We don't know for a fact if paraquat was involved, but it's in all likelihood it probably was because of records indicating other farm fields have used paraquat. And the thing about paraquat is it can become a dust and blow into people's yards as well as get into drinking water. Mm-hmm. And it's, there's a well-known study that the American Medical Association released just in May of 2025 that shows that if you live within a mile of a golf course, your chances of developing Parkinson's go up by 200%. And that's because of the herbicides, especially paraquat. It wasn't until 2021 that the EPA banned paraquat for golf courses.
Now, these studies, including the one that found that people, again, living near golf courses may face a higher risk of Parkinson's. These studies are not without their detractors.
Absolutely.
So who are the skeptics of the research, that shows that link between paraquat and Parkinson's? And is there any merit in their hesitancy?
That's a good question. It's something that the courts are going to have to decide. There's really 6,500 lawsuits filed in the federal courthouse in East St. Louis against Syngenta, the maker of paraquat, and Chevron, which distributed paraquat up until the mid-1980s. So the biggest skeptics of paraquat's connection to Parkinson's are Syngenta's own scientists and lawyers. Those are the major scientists. Now, Syngenta has maintained for decades that no peer-reviewed independent study has definitively proven that paraquat exposure causes Parkinson's disease. Now, that's also a viewpoint that our United States Environmental Protection Agency shares, too. They also maintain, right now, the EPA, there is no clear-cut causal link between paraquat and Parkinson's, although EPA, in January of this year, commenced a thorough review, according to Lee Zeldin, the EPA administrator. Interestingly, and this is very interesting, despite public denial, Syngenta's own internal documents revealed in 2007 show that top Syngenta scientists acknowledged that, quote, data indicated there is a progressive incidence of Parkinson's disease associated with pesticides and paraquat in particular. So their own internal documents show that they know that paraquat is dangerous and is implicated in Parkinson's disease. Mm-hmm. These documents are contained in what's called the Paraquat Papers, In late 2023, the Guardian newspaper and an investigative website named New Lead obtained these documents through discovery and court cases. And it shows that Syngenta played the same game as the fossil fuel industry and the cigarette industry in downplaying evidence of their product's danger and getting favorable treatment from the media.
Mm-hmm. Syngenta's valuation is estimated to be in the tens of billions of dollars. And the Chinese company that owns Syngenta has a combined asset value of several hundreds of billions. So money, how does this play into this? And what challenge then does that pose for people who are trying to hold this massive ag tech company to account?
That's a very good question. It's a very difficult question. Syngenta is based in Basel, Switzerland. It's owned by a company called Sinochem Holdings, which is literally the world's largest chemical company with 220,000 employees and 140 billion with a B in sales every year. Sinochem is wholly owned by the Chinese government. What is interesting about this, and I think people should be very concerned, is the Chinese government has offloaded the dangers of paraquat from its own agricultural workers onto American workers and making billions of dollars in profit. No one's talking about that, and we should. And people are paying a terrible price for that.
Well, and that price has to do with folks who are living very close to here. East St. Louis has become a battleground against the Swiss agrochemical giant Syngenta. And attorneys on behalf of a man named Joe Harrison filed an amended lawsuit after his death, which was relatively recent. They alleged that Syngenta failed to provide warnings about the dangers of paraquat. Mike, tell us about this case very quickly.
Sure, yeah. Joe Harrison was an African-American man who grew up in rural Oklahoma. He loved his country, was deeply proud of his service in the military, and unfortunately, we live in a country that prioritizes shareholder value over human life. He was a cattle rancher. He says he got symptoms of Parkinson's from exposure to paraquat, and his life was a living hell in the last few years of his life, unfortunately. So he filed him and his heir, Patty Ponsel, fired a lawsuit against Syngenta in federal court. He'll never see the results, obviously, since he passed away in late 2023. But like other people I've interviewed whose family members have filed lawsuits, they just want the word to get out that paraquat needs to be banned from America to prevent future cases of Parkinson's.
Thanks for joining us today, Mike. More of Mike Fitzgerald's reporting on this topic can be found at stlpr.org.
This episode was produced by Emily Woodbury.
Audio engineering and podcast design by Aaron Dorr.
Our executive producer is Alex Hoyer.
St. Louis on the Air is a production of St. Louis Public Radio. Understanding starts here.
Do you find yourself regularly listening to episodes of St. Louis on the Air? Suggest us to a friend you think might enjoy our conversations. And leave us a review and rating on Apple Podcasts on the App Store. It's the simplest way to help people discover our show. Thanks.
St. Louis Public Radio is a member-supported service of the University of Missouri St. Louis.